Thank you, Professor Paul, for your kind introduction. My deepest thanks to Hanny and Najet Hassan and the Faculty of Arts and Humanities at Western University for the honor of speaking tonight as part of their endowed series during Islamic Heritage Month. My sincere gratitude to the organizers of the UAAC conference for including this talk as part of their exciting program. Finally, I am especially indebted to Dr. Jessica Shagirl for organizing all the arrangements for the lecture and for my visit. A personal thanks to my brother and niece for driving me to London for this special occasion. This month is meant to be joyous, but I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that we gather here today under the long shadow of war in the Middle East. A war that has led to many deaths, countless displaced persons, and endangered many more lives, as well as threatening cultures that have endured for millennia. In moments like these, I am reminded of the importance of the work of museums and universities do. Protecting the past and preserving heritage, fostering understanding, conversation, and compassion. Values that the Hanny and Najet Hassan lecture series is uniquely positioned to uphold. And on that note, let's begin today's conversation. I'd like to begin with a brief historical background of the medieval Islamic period and the major dynasties I will be referring to this evening. The Fatimid Caliphate, a medieval Islamic dynasty, established their new capital city of Cairo in the year 969 CE. The Fatimids ruled Egypt for just over 2 centuries as political rulers or caliphs, and also functioned as religious leaders or imams of the Shia Ismaili Muslim communities who lived within Egypt and across West Asia, South Asia, and Central Asia. They claimed direct descent from the Prophet Muhammad and the 4th Muslim caliph and first Shia Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib. They also chose their dynastic name, Fatimids, to openly proclaim their ancestry from Fatima, who was the Prophet Muhammad's daughter and Imam Ali's wife. At their height, the Fatimids controlled or held political sway over much of North Africa, Sicily, Syria, Palestine, the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, Yemen, and Multan, as shown on the map in purple. They openly challenged the political authority of the Abbasid dynasty of Baghdad and swiftly assumed control over a vast network of maritime trade that linked the Mediterranean world with Africa and Asia. There. Egypt's economic prosperity attracted artisans from across the Islamic world, and the best preserved artifacts from this period range from carved ivory, woodwork, and rock crystal to woven textiles and gold jewelry. This period is also known for its luxury glazed, lustre-painted ceramics, which were decorated with silver and copper oxide paints. The lustre painting technique enabled artists to create precise, line-drawn designs that gleamed like silver and gold after they were fired. The decoration on Fatimid Egyptian and Syrian lustre ceramics is notable for its use of lively figural imagery that has a narrative quality and displays a style of realism unique to Islamic pottery up to this period. However, the majority of the images in the arts of the Fatimid period have been interpreted as universal genre themes of hunting, merriment, and other courtly pastimes, often referred to as the symbolic cycle of images made to glorify princely patrons. Western scholars of Islamic painting, such as the late Richard Ettinghausen, argued that the artists of the Fatimid period were responding to the shifting tastes of elite and middle-class Egyptians of the 11th century, who preferred a heightened degree of realism and dynamism in figural art. This contrasted with earlier Umayyad and Abbasid figural depictions, which were rendered in more static formal poses and sometimes in a more abstract style than their Fatimid counterparts, as shown on the screen. The comparison of the two lustre bowls depicting seated drinkers from Fatimid Egypt and Abbasid Iraq makes the point. I would argue that artists from the Fatimid period not only depicted courtly subjects with realistic liveliness, such as princely feasts and merriment, they also experimented with a range of subject matter that blurred the boundaries between courtly and daily life in Cairo, and were open to a range of visual, literary, and popular interpretations. For example, I have discussed the significance and layers of meaning of the image of the giraffe in Fatimid art elsewhere, framing it within the context of state-sponsored propaganda as part of the dynasty's efforts to bring its symbols of power and mystique out into the streets of Cairo, to publicly legitimize its sovereignty. In a similar vein, in this presentation, I wish to analyze the image of the dancer within the context of the Fatimid dynasty's aspirations to foster a cosmopolitan court culture, and against the historical background of its flourishing trade and diplomatic contacts with Central Asia and China. But first, our story begins with a painting competition held at the court of the Fatimid vizier Ali al-Yazuri in Cairo. Between the years 1050 and 1058, Al-Hassan ibn Ali al-Yazuri, vizier to the Fatimid Imam Caliph al-Mustansir Billah, summoned two renowned painters, the Egyptian Al-Qasir and the Iraqi artist Ibn Aziz, to an open assembly or majlis to demonstrate their talents and be judged in front of an audience. The artistic rivals worked on opposite sides of the hall, using the walls as their canvases, and both of them chose to paint images of female dancers as their subjects. The tension in the majlis hall was palatable, as the Egyptian painter Al-Qasir, infamous for demanding extravagant wages and for his arrogance concerning his abilities, depicted a dancer in a white garment within a niche painted in black, giving the appearance of her entering into the wall. Not to be outdone by his rival, the Iraqi artist Ibn Aziz painted a dancer in an eye-catching red garment within a yellow niche, portraying her as though she were emerging from the wall. Not surprisingly, the mainly Egyptian audience was more impressed with Al-Qasir's efforts in the competition. Nonetheless, Al-Yazuri enjoyed the event tremendously and presented both artists with robes of honor and bags of gold. Although we are fortunate that this account was recorded by the 14th century historian Al-Makrizi, we have absolutely no idea what the actual paintings look like or what form of dance they depicted, as these wall paintings no longer exist. However, I show you three paintings recovered from the wall frescoes from Pompeii, depicting dancing maenads and Flora, the goddess of flowers and spring, shown entering and emerging from the walls. They attest to the long-standing popularity of this subject matter and its artistic treatment in the Mediterranean world. The artists at Al-Yazuri's court were also likely well-versed in late antique and Coptic styles of painting that were meant to create optical illusions of three-dimensional spaces on two-dimensional surfaces. The appearance of dancing girls in the artistic repertoire of Muslim dynasties predating the Fatimids is well established. The image on the left is a portrait of a female dancer painted on the southern arch of the audience hall at Qusayr Amr, the 8th century Umayyad dynasty's desert palace in Jordan. The one on the right is a reconstruction of the wall painting of two dancers in the reception hall of the Abbasid palace at Samarra in Iraq, dating to the mid-9th century. The original fresco is very fragmentary, so I'm showing you Hertzfeld's reconstruction produced in 1913. Many scholars have argued that the iconography of the dancing girls in these contexts are adaptations of Sasanian and Greco-Roman Mediterranean visual cultures inherited by the early Muslim dynasties. Images of dancers frequently appear in the arts of the Fatimid period as well, such as on this lustre painted bowl from the National Museum of Asian Art, part of the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Although the female dancer depicted on this bowl and on other medieval Egyptian objects are often compared to the Samarra dancers, the type of dance portrayed here is altogether very different. To my knowledge, there are no artistic depictions of this particular dance form originating from Baghdad or Samarra, or Egypt for that matter, prior to the Fatimid period. So let's take a closer look at the image on this bowl. The female performer is central in this composition and is rendered in a lively dance posture as she kneels on her right leg while her left knee bends at a right angle. Her left arm curves downward and her hand rests on her knee. In a counterpoised position, her right arm curves upward and touches her inclining head. Most scholars have assumed that the dancer grips a scarf in each hand and hence performs a kind of scarf dance. However, the long articles of fabric that she grips are extremely long sleeves attached to her fitted blouse, not scarves. The artist's detailed rendering of the circular openings at the end of each sleeve affirms this attribution. Thus, the extension of each tube-like sleeve is wrapped into her fist and left to hang down. The horizontal bands decorating the upper arms of her costume most likely represent woven bands inscribed with Arabic blessings and were called tiraz textiles. I refer to these things here, these sorts of bands. Tiraz textiles were woven in workshops controlled by the palace and were used by the Fatimid rulers to bestow robes of honor to their families, courtiers, and citizens on special occasions. The reference to tiraz textiles on this bowl is perhaps an indication that the dancer was in the service of the palace as a royal court performer. Large single-handled jars with decorative bands float on each side of the dancer, alluding to a social gathering. The Smithsonian bowl is one of several reconstructed lustre-painted bowls featuring sleeve dancers. A second bowl, shown here on the left, belongs to the Museum of Islamic Art in Cairo, and two other fragmentary bowls, shown on the right, are housed at the Museum of Islamic Art in Berlin. They follow similar iconographic models, although two of the bowls feature the dancers standing upright, on one leg with counterpoised arms, and with the addition of a long wavy scarf worn across the dancer's chest and a halo around her head. This one is very fragmentary here, but she's got a halo, she's standing upright, and you can just about see one of the sleeves here. In fact, the iconography of the sleeve dancer appears on all manner of material culture from Fatimid Egypt, such as the deeply carved ivory and wood panels shown here that likely adorned interior spaces such as doors, furniture, or small chests made to hold valuable personal valuables. Sleeve dancing and other forms of dance appear in a definitively royal or courtly context, carved as depictions on the wooden panels that once decorated the walls and ceilings of the Western Fatimid Palace in Cairo, which was built by the Imam Caliph al-Aziz and assigned to his daughter, the Princess Sitt al-Mulk. On these panels, images of dancers are arranged alongside musicians, hunters, seated princes, birds, and beasts. However, in this context, the sleeve dancers appear to be male figures, wearing turbans, as shown above and drawn on the right. It's a little hard to see in this light, but this is a sleeve dancer. And I think this fellow here is holding an instrument. That's a sleeve dancer. And this is what the drawing is of that dancer. Here, you've got a very different dance. It's a female dancer with castanets. So whereas the dancer with castanets shown below is likely female based on her headdress, there are traces of blue and red pigment on the wooden beams, which would have emphasized the depth of the carving and allowed the images to stand out when seen from afar. One can conjecture that these dances were performed at the palace, and it is reported that Sitt al-Mulk had 4,000 enslaved women and girls working for her. So presumably some of them served as accomplished dancers, musicians, and singers. According to Delia Cortese and Simonetta Calderini, some palace concubines, including enslaved women, received formal tuition in singing, dancing, and a range of musical instruments, as well as poetry from renowned scholars. Some of the most vivid depictions of sleeve dancers appear outside Fatimid Egypt, in a Christian chapel within a palace called the Cappella Palatina in Palermo, Sicily. The painted wooden honeycomb or muqarnas ceiling of this royal chapel, muqarnas ceiling, so this one right here, was probably completed by the year 1143 and was made under the patronage of the Norman king Roger II. Scholars agree that the main artistic sources of the painted ceiling are to be found in Fatimid Egyptian craftsmanship, and there is substantial evidence that the ceiling was made by Arabs from Egypt. There are over 3,000 individually framed paintings on the ceiling, comprising courtly, mythological, and biblical iconography, including a number of dancers and musicians. Clearly, the artists understood the iconography of the Egyptian sleeve dance, and one might also assume that the dance was performed at the court of Roger II, who not only had Egyptian artists create this wonderful ceiling for his royal chapel, but he also borrowed the administrative, military, and visual cultures of Fatimid Egypt to establish his own brand of kingship. So who are these sleeve dancers? Where did they come from? What do we know about the origins of this dance form? And why did it take Fatimid Egypt by storm in this way? The late Professor Ernst Gruber was the first to point us in the direction of Central Asia and China. Dance culture of the Chinese Han Dynasty, which ruled from 206 BCE to 220 CE, already featured several forms of sleeve dancing, which were discerned by the lightness of the dancers' steps, the complex movements of the hands and long sleeves, and the emotional expressions of the dancers. A number of tomb figurines and jade plaques have been excavated from Han tombs, many with associations to royal women, which connects the dance possibly to court culture. The scholar Susan Erickson argues that the image of the sleeve dancer in Han context was also connected to female shamanesses, whose dance movements were endowed with the power to summon the rains and to act as bridges between the terrestrial and celestial realms as invokers of spirits. She interprets these objects as potent symbols buried in tombs to harness their talismanic properties. The movements of the sleeve dancers during the Han Dynasty appeared to have been slow and ritualized. However, by the latter part of the 6th century, new forms of Central Asian music and more vigorous dance traditions arrived from the areas of ancient Sogdiana, parts of present-day Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, which had a profound impact on Chinese music and dance. During the Tang Dynasty, in the 8th century, the art of dance in China reached a peak, as the so-called silk routes became one of the primary conduits by which foreign musicians came to China, with the Sogdians acting as the main middlemen in this trade. Dancers from Central Asia, particularly from Tashkent, Bukhara, and Samarkand, became the most famous in China. One account described the dancers as wearing red blouses with tight green sleeves and matching green silk trousers, red boots, and a white sash that served as a belt. They whirled as fast as the wind, and thus the dance became known as Hu Huswan Wu, or the Sogdian whirling dance. Descriptions of Sogdian dancers appear in Chinese poetry, such as the one shown on the screen. The Iranian from Tashkent appears young. He dances to the music, holding the wine goblet, as rapid as a bird. He wears a cloth cap of foreign make, empty and pointed at the top. His Iranian robe of fine felt has tight sleeves. Another poem describing the Hu Huswan or whirling girls from Samarkand states, Hu Huswan girls, your hearts respond to strings, your hands to drums. When strings and drums sound, your hands are raised. You turn, whirl, and dance like falling snow. Turn to the left, pivot to the right without knowing fatigue. Make 1,000 turns, 10,000 revolutions without stopping. Nothing in the world is comparable to you. The wheels of a moving cart, the eddying of the wind are even slower. Ceramic figurines featuring dancers with long, tight sleeves, together with entire orchestras of female musicians, have been found in abundance at excavations of Tang period tombs, such as the ones shown here from the Roms collection. With all of this material and literary evidence from China and Central Asia, one would think that the mentions of sleeve dancers would be easily found in Arabic sources from Fatimid Egypt. Ironically, I have yet to locate an explicit reference to sleeve dancing in Fatimid historical literature. There are many references to singers and dancers, who were kept as enslaved persons at court and by elite members of society. References to female entertainers also appear in the context of weddings, births, picnics, and even group visits to the hammam or the bathhouse, but no explicit mention is made of sleeve dancing. The 11th century Arabic Book of Gifts and Rarities recounts the contents of an impressive caravan of gifts sent by the Fatimid Imam Caliph Az-Zahir to his governor in North Africa, which included beautiful women extolled as expert singers and captivating dancers. Although we are not told what these beautiful entertainers were wearing or the type of dance they performed, we are told that they rode in ornamented sedan chairs set on top of Bactrian camels from Khorasan, an area that encompassed the region of ancient Sogdiana. Verses from a poem in this account read, "As the slim-waisted dancers move to the chants, their moves to the tune seem themselves like song. Were their footsteps to fall on the eyes of a sore-eyed man, he would not complain that their sandals were even eyelids." Another contemporary source by the 11th century Fatimid court singer, musician, court instructor, and musical theorist, Ibn at-Tahan, is a handbook of musical performance called The Compendium of the Arts to Comfort Sad Hearts. In it, he offers several names of dances he has come across from different parts of the Islamic world. I quote, "It has reached me that the Persians, the Furs, the people of Khorasan, Arai, and Tabaristan have beautiful dances. The dances of the Turks in the above areas are probably similar to them. The people of Marv, Al-Ahwaz, and Samarkand have a dance they call Al-Balawi. The people of Damascus, or possibly Syria, have beautiful dances that they call Marwazi. The people of Hijaz and Kufa have a dance they call pounding the safflower. As for the dances popular in Egypt, they are the Far'ali, or the hyena dance, the Sufi, or the mystical dance, the Baghdadi, and the Ibli, the camel dance. As for dancing on a hobby horse, it is more common in Baghdad than in Egypt. Dancing on the ropes is common among the Chinese people. Dancing on top of horses is common to the Indian people. So this begs the question, could the sleeve dance in Fatimid Cairo have conceivably been called the Sufi mystical dance? Frustratingly, Ibn at-Tahan does not elaborate further on this. But we know that Sufi mystics practiced a spiritual, ecstatic dance known as Sama as early as the second half of the 9th century among the Sufis of Baghdad, while the practice of Sama originated from further east in Khorasan. Hence, Sama was used by Sufis as a physically active form of meditation to reach closer to the divine, long before it was institutionalized by the followers of Jalaluddin Rumi in Turkey, whom we know today as the Mevlevi whirling dervishes. However, we must not forget that Rumi himself was born in Balkh, in present-day Afghanistan, and fled to Konya in Turkey because of the Mongol invasions. So it is highly probable that he was already familiar with the practice of Sufi dance from his homeland. After the fall of the Fatimid dynasty in the 12th century, images of sleeve dancing in the Egyptian context seem to have mysteriously disappeared altogether. Instead, the many depictions of both Sufi and secular sleeve dancing in Islamic art appears mainly from the Eastern Islamic lands, across media, from manuscript painting to ceramics. Sleeve dancing also appears in Byzantine art from the late 12th century onwards. So I show you three examples of the sleeve dancing. You have the Sufi dancers here, which is from a manuscript of the Diwan of Hafiz, and it was made in Herat in Afghanistan in the 15th century. Then in the middle, you have an image from a folio of the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, in which Bahram Gur, the king Bahram Gur, is entertained by the daughters of Barzin from the 14th century. And so one of them plays a harp. I think the other one is playing a drum. We can't see her there. But here in the middle, you have your sleeve dancer. And then the sleeve dancer on the right depicted on a ceramic plate from Kashan, Iran, around the 12th or 13th centuries. So in conclusion, the Fatimids, like other major dynasties in the medieval world, such as the Tang dynasty and the Song dynasty of China, which was contemporary to Fatimid rule, governed major metropolitan centers of their time. These dynasties boosted the traffic of foreign goods, people, their technologies, ideas, and cultures by becoming the principal players of international trade. Historical sources also paint a vivid picture of a middle-class bourgeoisie in the medieval period, with a taste for the latest luxury wares and forms of entertainment. Both the Song and Fatimid dynasties consciously portrayed themselves as political powers with both Western and Eastern connections and aspirations. The Fatimid dynasty's inclination towards the East is attested from its establishment and control over a vast network of trade and commerce between the Mediterranean world and India, China, and other parts of Asia. As Philippe Bojar has convincingly argued, the 10th and 11th centuries saw, I quote, a scramble for leadership between the three caliphal capitals, Cordoba, Cairo, and Baghdad. This race for power and legitimacy stimulated a dynamic tension which promoted long-distance networks, unquote. At times, religious considerations and designs also motivated Fatimid commercial interests. The Fatimid Dawa, or institution of the propagation of Ismailism, was led by trained and learned da'is, or religious emissaries, who often adopted the guise of merchants in order to travel safely through dangerous anti-Ismaili lands. Da'is established Ismaili communities in the Abbasid-governed lands of Khorasan and Central Asia, precisely where sleeve dancing originated and was practiced among Sufi groups and as a specialized dance form. Finally, Cairo's political and economic stability attracted artisans and craftsmen from various parts of the Muslim world. Lustre pottery and carved wood and ivory artifacts were almost certainly sought precisely because they made their owners conspicuous and contributed to their self-representation, identity, and social status. These and other reasons explain the popularity of the Eastern sleeve dance in the arts of Fatimid Egypt. An important subject that I have not explored in this talk is the status of the sleeve dancer in Fatimid society. Recent scholarship has explored more closely the workings of the long-distance slave trade in Islamic contexts, with a particular focus on enslaved women who have, over millennia, been forcibly transported to foreign lands to serve as concubines, slave musicians, entertainers, or as tribute, war booty, and diplomatic gifts between political rulers. By owning these multitudes of women and men from faraway lands, their elite owners, both male and female, demonstrated their own power, authority, wealth, and prestige. Enslaved women in the medieval Arab world were called jawari, and scholars such as Holly Ledbetter have argued that The sleeve dancer depicted in Fatimid art are representations of jawari, or enslaved women, who were exploited not only for their bodies, their labor, their talents, but also served as carefully constructed visual ideologies on artworks that provided pleasurable experiences for their owners and members of elite society. These images, she argues, beautify labor and obscure the drudgery of domestic and sexual enslavement. My intention this evening was not to obscure the labor, hardships, exploitation, and talents of these women. Rather, I hope that by drawing attention to the artworks of the Fatimid period that celebrated this specialized form of dance, I am highlighting the importance and impact that these women performers had within medieval Egyptian cultural heritage and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. We now have time for questions. Do you want me to keep track?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so if you would raise your hand if you're interested in asking a question, and we'll bring a microphone to you. Thank you so much. Following up this very interesting question. I don't have a question recently. I would say I confess because I discovered something with my or I would areas I have because I have one in my manuscript. I got from my PhD of she's painting the spiritual like father of the self with the fantasy doing actually see us. Yes, maybe even exaggeration in the photo to see that style statement there. Um, I'm sorry, but thank you because really this is very educating. Um, I also see a grandmother sort of dancing in Hamburg in Germany or actually Switzerland, where a group of China answer also he like initiated some groups of dancing with I'm not sure if it's sleep actually, but I was trying to look closely and I think it is a sort of sleep as they call it curiosity.
Wow.
And he was very famous that he was very inspired by history, art. But I really don't know. Now I'm interested in investigating more to understand and he knows about history dancing.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great.
Thank you for your comments. And if you come across the reference to the dancing in Germany, I would love to hear more. Do let me know. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Was there one back there? No.
Yes. So please speak into the mic. And the other thing is just for recording. Thank you so much for that. I was just terms of you mentioned about the situation for the dancers and how they may be enslaved. And I couldn't help but think, were there male counterparts to these activities, dance or music, that accompanied the dancers?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's fascinating that the wooden beams from the palace, the sleeve dancers were all male with turbans. So whether or not they were eunuchs or not, I'm not sure. Um, and absolutely, there were professional musicians at the court, uh, whether they were playing the lute or different types of stringed instruments, flutes, drums, and so on. So there was a huge kind of orchestra of people. But then, of course, there is, so they may have had a slightly better lifestyle than perhaps others who had to work in kind of everyday situations in bars, or they had to work in taverns, I mean, or maybe they were part of a more domestic household. I think these are issues that are interesting, and I think that we're only just beginning to scratch the surface on who these people really were and what sort of hardships they had to endure. um, so thanks for the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that talk and presentation. Sorry, Dr. Jim, your question kind of inspired mine. I was thinking about, do you know in material culture if the way these women were visually depicted, was it openly meant to convey who they were? Like, was court culture trying to hide the fact that they were women that were enslaved? How was that? Do you know if that history was kind of open, not proud per se, but as a like that commodification of the body of the labor? Was that quite open, or was that something that was trying to be subdued? I was curious about
It's
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a precise answer for you. Um, but what I find interesting is that usually a free woman was not portrayed in the arts because it was considered shameful. And so there was a kind of separation between private and public. And so the arguments that scholars who are working on these topics um, seem to suggest that it was only concubines or enslaved women who were depicted in Fatimid art. I don't know. I'm not sure how we can actually prove these things, um, and whether or not it's just a case of survival of the artwork. I mean, these things were dug from the ground, so I don't know. It's really hard to generalize as to whether whether this commodification of women or like, why is it that the princes, for example, I showed the image of the there you go. Now this fellow here, clearly he is an upper class person. Even this guy here. And so I don't know. I would love to explore this further. You know, are free men openly depicted in the arts, whereas free women were not? That's a big question that I'd love to explore further. Thank you for the question.
why technology evolved terminology comes from the West, Western culture and history. I haven't seen it in the Eastern history. Have you came across the medieval terminology in the Islamic world?
So, do you mean the term
Yes.
medieval?
Yes.
Have I come across it
Mhm.
in scholarship or in, how do you mean? The medieval period. Ah, okay.
That doesn't necessarily translate
No,
to the East.
no.
At the time, they had a golden age.
Yes, yes.
So that was interesting to me to see these together.
I see. That's an interesting point. Um, I mean, do you feel there's a negative connotation to the word medieval?
No, I just wonder if they use medieval terminology in the East too, or no, it's just happening.
I
You're trying to reference, okay, during that period, what happened, what was the influence of Chinese civilization?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I find that in the medieval, I mean, in the sources that I look at, um, Eastern sources that I consult, they tend to focus on dynastic names. So they will say the Seljuk period, in the Fatimid period, in the Mongol period, the Ilkhanid period. So I don't suppose that they use necessarily a broad term as medieval. So thank you for mentioning that, because I'll ponder on it some more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nika. Thank you so much. Um, we were just thinking about the role of Shia at this time because you made a reference to the Silk Road and how the representations played out in relation to Shia and in to their culture there, which is extraordinary. So I just thought we maybe could explore a little bit about the relationship of the Silk Road and in reference to how the influences are moving in terms of the way that, and I'm really interested in what I was saying there about medieval and equivalent terminologies, if they exist or not, like the term globalization,
Yes.
in this context, because what we are seeing in relation to talk is how, in relation to Asia and across these spaces into the Mediterranean basin, and how phenomenal um, the exchanges were. Thank you very much for the presentation.
That's a great point. I think that's one of the things that one of the points I was trying to make is, I know I'm using these Western terms, globalization, but globalization has always existed, and um, especially as you say along the so-called Silk routes, or indeed the Indian Ocean trade, and yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The Tang capital was Shangan, which is present day Xi'an, and uh, this was considered, and I know scholars in the audience will know the history better than me, but as far as my readings are, this was considered one of the golden periods, one of the peaks of cultural exchange, and dance reached a phenomenal level at that time. And again, it was these giant metropolises where people from all over the world were welcomed, and where they exchanged ideas and crafts and technologies. And again, Cairo was kind of like that as well, because there was a freedom to be able to do to do these kinds of arts. I think it sort of shifted from Baghdad and Basra to Cairo during the 11th century. And so artisans were mobile people, and although they worked as families, they were able to pick up and go where patronage was. And so I think we have to take that into account as well in terms of these periods of the blossoming of particular forms of art as well. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a quick question. You mentioned when referring to the Latina,
Yes.
you referred to Roger II and how he brought in artisans from Egypt and the Arab world. And you said something about these contributing to the branding of his kingdom. I was wondering, I mean, I'm fascinated by the idea, so I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on this, on that branding of Roger II.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. I mean, Sicily was part of the Fatimid domains before Roger came. So already there were Arabs and Greeks and, local populations. So there was already a mixing of cultures there. And when Roger established uh, Palermo as his Norman capital, he realized that there was already a very sophisticated administrative organization in place. And so the diwan, or the headquarters of the palace's administration, was in Arabic. So he employed Arab administrators to work as functionaries in the palace. There is a very famous cape, the Cape of Roger II. It's this beautiful kind of semicircle that's bright red silk with an image of a kind of, I believe it's a camel, and then you have a lion attacking it, and it's in mirror. And again, this iconography came directly from the Islamic world, from the Middle East. Poetry there was composed in Arabic. And the Capella Palatina, it's a mixture of Byzantine mosaics, as you could see, and where is it? Oh, where is he? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, you can see all of these are mosaics, and then you have this massive um, ceiling made of wood, painted in the style of an Islamic mosque in a way, with these honeycombs. So yeah, I think it was a really, really fascinating time period. And so even if you go to Sicily today and you visit, you feel like there's still that mixing of cultures in that originate from the time of Roger II. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending, and I'd just like to thank our speakers.